Okay, and then the next topic, I will explain about the thinking framework. So there are several definitions of the thinking framework. The online Encarta Word English Dictionary defines the framework as a set of ideas, principles, agreements, or rules that provide the basis or the outline for something that is more fully developed at a later stage. And the definition of thinking framework based on Harrell 2010. Thinking framework is a basic structure of the ideas, like abstraction and relationships, that serve as the basis for a phenomenon that is to be investigated. Thinking framework describes a relationship between a variable and another variable. And based on Polanyi et al. 2009, the thinking framework is based on a research question and represents a collection of several concepts and the relationship between these concepts. Okay, and then the next, there are several advantages of using a framework to conceptualize a research. The first, a framework provides a structure for conceptualizing and designing research studies. And in particular, a research framework helps to determine the nature of the question asked, the manner in which questions are formulated, the way the concepts, constructs, and process of the research are defined, and the principle of discovery and justification allow for creating new knowledge about the topic under study. And then the second is there is no data without a framework to make sense of this data. It means that one important aspect of a researcher beliefs is the framework, theory-based or otherwise. This framework makes it possible to make sense of a set of data. And then the third, need for deep understanding. A research framework helps us develop deep understanding by providing a structure for designing research studies, interpreting data resulting from the studies, and drawing conclusions. Okay, and then the next is the types of thinking framework. So there are several types of thinking framework. The first is theoretical framework, the second is practical framework, and the last is conceptual framework. So for the first, theoretical framework guides research activities by its reliance on a formal theory, that is, a theory that has been developed by using an established and coherent explanation of certain sort of phenomena and relationship. The second, the practical framework. This kind of framework is not informed by formal theory but by the practice knowledge of practitioners and the finding of previous research and often the viewpoints offered by public opinion. And then the last, conceptual frameworks are based on previous research but might be based on coherent theories and various aspects of practitioner knowledge, depending on what the researcher can argue will be relevant and important to address a research problem. And then the next, there are several steps to construct a thinking framework. So we can see in this slide that there are 6 steps to construct a thinking framework. For the first, determine the variable in the tile. So a researcher must determine data variable in the tile to obtain all of theories to support the formulation of a thinking framework clearly. Usually, the variable can be determined by pay attention on the title of the research, and then the researcher can determine the data variables from the title. And then the second step is read research book or research result. Read the book relevant to the research variable. The book can be in the form of an encyclopedia, dictionary, or any other textbook. Meanwhile, to learn about research result, it can include a thesis, research report, scientific journal, and dissertation. And then the third step is describe the theory related to research variable. Provide a deductive explanation of the relationship between research variables. The stage of deductive thinking include the three things as follows. The first, the conceptioning stage, which is looking for concepts or variable from existing propositions that have been declared true. The second, the consideration or decision stage, which is the stage of preparing the provisions supporting or determining the problem due to the concept or dependent variable. And the third, the reasoning stage, which is the stage things that apply to the theory. And then the fourth step is provide theoretical arguments. The theoretical argument in a thinking framework is aimed to obtain answer to the problem formulation. In practice, making theoretical arguments requires theoretical study or relevant research result. And since the theoretical argument is an attempt to obtain answer to the problem formulation, so the result of this theoretical argument is a temporary answer of the problem formulation of research. So it can be said that finally the product of the thinking framework is a temporary answer to the problem formulation, or it called hypothesis. And then the fifth step is synthesis of conclusion. The combination of the synthesis that occurs between these variables will produce several thinking frameworks which can be used to formulate a hypothesis. And then, after the previous step have done, and then the last, a researcher can construct a thinking framework. And then the next, I will explain about the models of thinking framework. There are two models of thinking framework. The first is correlation research model, and the second is improvement methods research model. Okay, for the first correlation research model, it's commonly used for correlation research model contains independent variables and dependent variables. And the second, improvement methods research model. It's often used in research in the field of science and engineering, including the field of computerization, based on Bernstein et al. 2008. Okay, and then this is the example of the correlation research model. The main component of the framework developed by Gregor Polanczyk in 2009 are as follows. The first, independent variables. The second, dependent variables. The third, levels or an indicator of the independent variable. And the last is measure or an indicator of the dependent variable to be observed. And then we can see in the following figure, there is an example of the framework. And the title of the research is The Effect of Software Development Methodology and the Number of Developers in the Team on Developer Productivity. And then the second is Improvement Methods Research Model. So, the main component of the framework developed by Gregor Polanczyk at 2009 as follows. The first, indicators. The second, proposed method. The third, objectives. And the fourth is measurement. We can see in the following figure, there is the example of improvement methods research model, with the title of the research is Principal Component Analysis Based Neural Network Model for Stock Price Prediction.